All right, let's dive in. We're looking at a nation at a complete crossroads, facing a crisis so deep that it would totally redefine who they were and what their future would look like. This is the story of how ancient Israel got its very first king.
Now, you might think a story about a kingdom begins in a palace or on a battlefield, right? Well, not this one. This entire national drama kicks off with the intensely personal, desperate prayer of a woman named Hannah. Her private struggle becomes this unlikely spark for a huge national transformation, leading to the birth of the prophet who would go on to anoint Israel's first two kings. So you have to understand, at the time, Israel wasn't really a kingdom. It was more of a loose collection of tribes. And the leaders, they were priests. But here's the problem. The very heart of the nation's leadership was rotten to the core. This wasn't just a minor issue. It was a massive power vacuum, just waiting for something to happen.
I mean, the contrast here is just night and day. On one side, you've got the high priest Eli's sons, Hophni and Phinehas. I mean, these guys were corrupt, stealing from the sacrifices, totally disrespecting their office. And on the other side, you've got the young boy Samuel, the answer to Hannah's prayer, faithfully serving in the temple. It's basically the whole conflict of the story in miniature, a failing, corrupt establishment versus a rising, faithful newcomer.
And this kind of corruption, well, it had devastating consequences. Israel suffers this catastrophic defeat against their enemies, the Philistines. Eli's sons are killed, and the Ark of the Covenant, the very symbol of God's presence, is captured. The crisis was so absolute that a baby born at the time was named Ichabod, which literally means the glory has departed from Israel. This was the nation's absolute rock bottom. But it's out of this complete disaster that leadership passes to the one person who stayed faithful through it all, Samuel. He steps right into that void, not as just another priest in a broken system, but as a prophet and a judge, which was this unique role of a charismatic military and spiritual leader. And wow, was Samuel's leadership effective? He rallies the people, calls them back to their faith, and then God gives them this stunning victory over the very enemies who had just humiliated them. He completely restores order and brings decades of peace. He really became the last, and you could argue the greatest, of all of Israel's judges. But as it goes, Samuel got old, and the people started to worry. His own sons were, well, they were showing signs of corruption, just like Eli's had. So fearing a total repeat of the past, they came to Samuel with a radical demand, one that was going to change everything.
Now, their reason for this is so important. Notice that last phrase, such as all the other nations have. See, this wasn't just a political request. It was a crisis of faith. They wanted to be like everyone else. They wanted a human king they could see leading them into battle, a tangible symbol of security, instead of trusting in an invisible God. As God himself tells Samuel, this isn't a rejection of him, it's a rejection of God as their true king.
So Samuel lays out the stark reality of what a monarchy will cost them. He tells them, a king won't just lead, he will take. He's going to conscript your kids, tax your property, and in the end, you'll basically become his servants. This is a huge shift, and it comes with a heavy price. But even after this dire warning, the people refused to listen. They had made their choice. And so, God gives them a king. His name was Saul. And in one very specific respect, he was exactly what the people were looking for. And this really gets to the core of the issue. The people saw a king who looked the part. He was tall, impressive, a real warrior type. It's what they valued. But God's standard, it's something else entirely. The Lord looks at the heart. And this conflict between the outward appearance and the inner character is going to define Saul's entire reign. Now, Saul starts off strong. He unites the nation, gets a big military win. But the pressures of leadership, they quickly expose the flaws in his character. In one crisis, he panics and performs a religious sacrifice that only Samuel was supposed to do. Later, he's given a direct command to completely destroy an enemy, but he spares their king and the best livestock, partly out of pride, partly to please his soldiers. His obedience is never quite complete. And this is Samuel's devastating verdict. The issue wasn't just one or two mistakes, it was a pattern. Saul's desire to please the people and secure his own legacy became way more important than actually obeying God. He started to value the crown more than the one who gave it to him. And so the kingdom is torn from him even while he's still sitting on the throne. So while the rejected King Saul continues his reign, God sends Samuel on a secret mission. The next king isn't going to be chosen for his height or his fighting skills. No, he's going to be found in the most unlikely of places, a sheep field.
The nation is once again totally paralyzed by fear of the Philistines. They have a new champion, and this sets the stage for one of the most famous confrontations in all of history, a battle that would reveal the character of Israel's true future king. Meet Goliath, a giant of a man covered in bronze armor who for 40 days straight, twice a day, comes out and just taunts and terrifies the entire Israelite army, including King Saul. No one dares to fight him. And then comes David, the youngest son of Jesse. He wasn't even there to fight. He was just bringing snacks to his brothers. He's not a soldier, he's a kid. But when he hears Goliath defying not just Israel's army, but Israel's God, he gets angry. You see, this battle was never about size, it was always about faith versus fear. With a single stone from his sling, David brings the giant down. He becomes an overnight national hero. But as the women come out to celebrate, their song of praise lights a fire of jealous rage in King Saul. He doesn't see a hero anymore, he sees a rival. And from that moment on, this story descends into this dark, tragic conflict. The kingdom is now split between the king on the throne and the hero of the people. And Saul's fear, it turns into a murderous obsession.
The escalation is swift, and Saul's paranoia drives him to madness. He tries to kill David with his own hands, he uses military missions as a death sentence, and he even sends assassins. Finally, he launches a full-scale manhunt, turning the state's army against the very man who saved the nation. David is forced to become a fugitive in his own country.
And then comes the ultimate test of character. While he's hiding in a cave, David finds Saul, alone and completely vulnerable. His men are urging him, "Kill him, this is your chance." But David refuses. He secretly cuts off a piece of Saul's robe as proof, but he will not harm the man God had chosen, even a rejected one. This single act of mercy proves that David is fit to be king in a way that Saul never was. So we don't end with a neat resolution. We end with a nation in turmoil. The legitimate but rejected king is still in power, totally consumed by hatred. And the chosen future king is living out in the wilderness, being hunted by the very man he continues to honor. And this leaves us with the central question of this entire story. What is the true measure of leadership? Is it the external symbols of power, the crown, the army, the title? Or is it the internal character, the heart, that gets revealed only when the pressure is really on?